Revenge with Karen.
At 6:12 a.m. on a Tuesday, I was sitting at my kitchen table. Again, with a half-eaten granola bar, a client escalation logged the size of a CVS receipt, and a headset that had permanently fused with the side of my skull. My third call of the day was with a client in Frankfurt who wanted to scream about an SLA breach that hadn't even technically happened. I diffused it, like always. 10 minutes later, a Manila liaison pinged about a backlog of onboarding forms stuck in someone's idea of a digital workflow. I fixed that too. This was just normal. For 5 years, I was the quiet engine keeping our biggest contract from falling apart. I didn't ask for praise. I didn't make noise. I just delivered. While the rest of the org chased agile buzzwords and rearranged deck chairs on the PowerPoint Titanic, I was putting out real fires with my bare hands and a wet post-it note. The founder, back when he actually ran things, once called me his safety net with teeth. Said it in front of the board, too. I laughed then, but I knew what he meant. I kept the whole thing from free-falling. If you're nodding along, hey, maybe hit that like button or even subscribe. I mean, 95% of you ghost listen anyway. It really does help the team behind the curtain keep pushing these stories out. All right, enough commercial. Let's get back to the wreckage. The thing is, quiet control works until the volume gets cranked by someone who thinks shouting equals strategy. Enter Chase. He arrived like a clown cannoned out of an MBA catalog, white teeth, loafers with no socks, a spreadsheet fetish, and the kind of ego that required its own onboarding flow. His dad, founder's old golf buddy, pulled strings to get him the VP of Ops title before he could spell compliance. I met him in the hallway on his second day. He was trying to connect his phone to the office printer. Said something like, "You must be Susan. I've heard you basically are this account." I smiled. We both knew it wasn't a compliment. At first, he was all charm and awkward fist bumps. But within a month, it started. Meetings where I was suddenly uninvited. Decks that went out to clients without review. Process changes that ignored the realities of the client contract, like gravity was optional. He'd CC me on announcements that affected my team, then ghost me when I asked for clarification. At one point, he called my work legacy ops clutter in a company Slack channel. I wasn't tagged. I was just the punchline. And the worst part, people started listening to him because he had a title and a jawline and a slide deck with the word synergy in 42-point font. He wore confidence like a cologne, and most of the execs, too tired or too distracted, let him spray it everywhere. Meanwhile, I was still doing the job, still managing the client, still fielding those early morning crisis calls, staying up late to proof technical documentation, reviewing deliverables line by line so nothing caught fire. My team knew, saw what was happening, but we were told to align with Chase's vision and lean into the transformation. What transformation? Taking a stable, revenue-generating account and stuffing it into a blender labeled cost optimization. I didn't argue, not yet. I watched. I documented. And when he called my workflow bloated, I smiled and nodded. Let the boy hang his own tie. But I'll admit, by the third time I was cut from a project sync, I felt it. A crawl in your chest that whispers, they don't want you here anymore. Still, I had leverage. They just didn't know it yet. And Chase, he was about to find out what happens when you mistake silence for submission. The first time Chase rewrote my project schedule without consulting me, I figured it was a rookie mistake. The second time, I thought maybe it was ego. By the third, when he rerouted a $250,000 vendor invoice through his friend's agile task force, I realized we weren't dealing with inexperience. We were dealing with entitlement dressed up in a J.Crew blazer. Chase didn't ask. He declared. One morning, I logged in and found a brand new workflow tool live for my team. No notice, no testing, no integration checks. Just a link in Slack with the caption, "Try this out." It's cleaner. Cleaner. It didn't even have document version control. Analysts spent 3 hours just figuring out how to upload the right PDFs. We flagged the risks. I flagged the risks, repeatedly. I kept a running list, missing escalation steps, unclear data access permissions, an API integration that had more holes than a golf course. I sent it to legal. I copied him. He responded once, "We'll fix it on the fly." Speed over perfection, Susan. Speed over perfection. Great slogan for a pizza place, terrible for a multi-million-dollar service contract with clawback clauses. Then came the email, the one he sent department-wide. The subject line was Operational Efficiency Phase 2, And right there in the fourth paragraph was this gem: some legacy processes remain in place due to internal resistance from team members set in their ways. We appreciate your patience as we modernize. Set in their ways. He didn't name me, but come on. It was the only ops lead still left from the original contract onboarding. It was a slap across the face delivered with a passive-aggressive post-it note. One of my junior analysts messaged me right after. Was that about you? I didn't answer. Instead, I reviewed the contract. The client contract. Because Chase had started making noise about outsourcing the implementation arm of the project. Offshore it all, he said in one meeting. Save 30% and look lean for the investors. Never mind that the client's SLA specifically required a US-based escalation lead. Never mind that I was named as the escalation lead. And never mind that we had a clause buried 3 pages deep, added back in 2020 during pandemic chaos, that tied the contract's continuation to named personnel presence. Named personnel presence. Me. When I brought it up casually in a leadership sync, Chase waved it off. We'll get the client to amend that. It's outdated language. I asked if legal had reviewed his new plan. He smiled and said, legal works for us. They'll sign off. I could have laughed, but I didn't. I just bookmarked the clause again and sent a quiet note to legal with the subject line. Reminder, 6.4b named personnel and continuity terms. No commentary, just the clause and a timestamp. After that, things moved faster. It was removed from weekly calls with the client. Chase sent a customer success manager in my place, a well-meaning but deer-in-headlights type who thought SLA meant service-level agility. The client noticed. Of course they did. Where's Susan? They asked on more than one call. Oh, she's working on internal optimization, the team replied. I was sitting 3 floors above them, watching, listening, waiting. The pressure started to build, not in outbursts, in the way every hallway conversation ended when I walked past. In the polite silences. In the sudden missed invites to meetings I'd led for years. I was being erased, one calendar update at a time. But you don't erase someone like me that easily. You don't spend 5 years building a system with your fingerprints on every function just to get ghosted by a nepotism hire with an MBA and a hard-on for Trello boards. So I stayed quiet. Let them build their sandcastle. Let them move the pieces. Let them forget the foundation had my name on it, in ink. It was the quarterly all-hands, video on, suits present, smiles fake. You know the kind. The family photo of corporate dysfunction where everyone pretends Chase isn't just the founder's favor dressed in human form. I was slotted 3rd on the agenda. Right after the new marketing lead announced we had a tick-tock now. My update was routine, client health, delivery metrics, escalation rates. The same block of data I delivered every quarter like clockwork. Except this time, I wasn't just reporting numbers. I was marking territory, showing that the contract wasn't just on track. It was thriving, and it was doing so under the system I'd built. I had maybe 6 sentences in when it happened. Chase leaned forward, smiling like he was about to propose to a reality TV judge. Actually, Susan, he said, cutting me off mid-slide, this will be the last time you're presenting on this. We're outsourcing her project effective next cycle. And then, just like that, he clicked the mute button. Muted in front of the founder, the board, the investors, the entire company. I couldn't unmute myself. He disabled my presenter rights. Just a frozen image of me holding a pointer, mouth slightly open mid-statistic. Every fiber of corporate training screamed at me to stay composed. Behind the eyes. Fire. You want to talk humiliation? Try having your legacy wiped like a dry erase board in front of 137 colleagues and 3 shareholders while your replacement plan is announced like a product launch. You want to talk fury? Try being silenced in real time about a project your fingerprints are embedded into, while a man who still forwards emails to himself for backup calls it his efficiency win. Here's the thing Chase didn't know. You mute my mic, I sharpen my aim. I didn't say a word, I didn't flinch. I stared into that camera like it owed me money. And then I closed the laptop. Mid-zoom, mid-smirk, gone. Let him sit in that silence. Let him fumble through the rest of my report like a drunk reading a treasure map. What most people didn't notice, what Chase didn't see, was the general counsel 2 squares over. He leaned forward right after it happened, took out a pen, started writing something down. I caught it before I exited. His expression wasn't confusion, it was calculation. Because you don't mute a named individual without consequence. Especially not when her name is on the clause that protects the company's biggest revenue stream. I didn't go home that night. I went to my old folder labeled Continuity. I opened the contract, the real one, the one I helped draft during the chaos of 2020. One that said, in very plain legalese, that if I resigned voluntarily, the client could walk. No fees, no arbitration, no Clause 22 delays. I was the linchpin. And now the whole company had watched Chase announce my irrelevance on the record with witnesses under a Zoom license that logs everything. So I started planning. Not for revenge, for release. It was April 2020. World was duct taped together with sourdough starters and toilet paper memes. Our biggest client was threatening to pull out of the deal unless we locked down a dedicated escalation lead. I remember sitting in my spare bedroom, which had become my war room, on a call with their head of risk management, a woman named Tanya who didn't suffer fools or buffer lag. Her exact words, "We need continuity, Susan, not just in title, in person," kept this thing alive. If you leave, we leave. At the time, I was too buried in deadlines to realize how rare that sentence was. I looped in legal. We drafted the clause. Standard at first, dedicated escalation resource, subject to mutual agreement, blah, blah, blah. Then Tanya sent back her red line. She added 3 words, specifically Susan Reynolds. Our general counsel raised an eyebrow. "You sure about this?" Tying it to a person, not a position. And you didn't blink. Your org sells stability. She's stability, so we did it. Section 6.4b, continuity of named personnel. It wasn't just ceremonial. It wasn't HR fluff. The clause gave the client the unilateral right to terminate the contract, penalty-free, if I resigned. Not fired. Resigned. I hadn't thought about that clause in years. It was one of 1,000 fireproofing measures we'd layered into the contract when the world was on fire. Chase, he'd never read the original version. He'd seen the sanitized summaries, the ones that made it all sound so plug-and-play. After the Zoom mute heard round the world, I pulled up the contract again. My version, not the one in the shared drive that had been cleaned up by his admin assistant. The real one, there it was. Page 47, paragraph 2. If Susan Reynolds, the named escalation officer, voluntarily resigns her employment, client reserves the right to terminate this agreement immediately, without further obligation, notice, or financial penalty. You ever read a sentence that makes your blood go cold, and then warm again? I stared at those words for a long time. Then I took a screenshot. I saved a PDF copy. I emailed both to myself. Subject line, 6.4b, insurance. Then, without a word, I opened the secure legal repository we all had access to, or CYA folder we jokingly called it. I uploaded the full, unedited contract. Added one note in the metadata, original version, executed, April 2020. I didn't send an alert. I didn't forward it with passive-aggressive commentary. I just made sure it was there, time-stamped, quietly breathing in the corner of the corporate server. Waiting. The next morning, I walked into the office with 2 coffees, one for me, one for no one in particular. I smiled at the receptionist, chatted with the facilities guy about the broken elevator, played the part, but something had shifted, because knowledge is one thing, leverage is another, and I now had both, in writing, on record, and Chase. He had a mute button and a god complex. Let's see which one holds up in court. HR called me in 2 days after the Zoom ambush, voice trembling like they'd drawn the short straw in a hostage negotiation. I walked in, iced coffee in hand, and sat down like I had nothing better to do, because technically I didn't. Chase had already gutted half my responsibilities. The HR rep, Dana, opened with the corporate soft shoe. "Hey, Susan, just wanted to circle back on Tuesday's call. I think there may have been a bit of miscommunication." I let the silence stretch until she got uncomfortable. She tried again. "Chase's announcement, he didn't mean it personally. You know, he's new to the culture here, still finding his rhythm." I blinked. He muted me in front of the board, Dana. She gave me that sympathetic HR smile. The kind that says, "Please don't sue us, just internalize this emotional abuse like a team player." Then she offered the olive branch. "Maybe we could frame this transition as a strategic pivot. We'd love to keep you involved during the handoff." I sipped my coffee. Am I being let go? Her mouth opened, then closed. "Oh no, of course not. You're still employed. We value you." Translation, "We're hoping you won't make this ugly." I stood up. "Then we're done here." Outside the glass box of HR appeasement, my team was unraveling. Jake, my senior analyst, caught me near the elevators. "Susan, people are freaking out. They heard about the clause. Is it true?" I paused. "What did you hear? That the client can walk? No penalties if you quit." I didn't confirm or deny. I just told him to keep his head down and not forward anything to his personal email. Let's not give them an excuse to pull security audits, I said. Then came the message. Junior legal, smart, nervous, probably still paying off law school, cornered me in the hallway like he'd stumbled onto an HR crime scene. His voice low, eyes darting. Is it true? He asked. Section 6.4b. That we lose the contract if you leave. I didn't break stride. You should check the signature page. He did. Within hours, Legal's shared folder was blinking with views like a Reddit thread gone viral. The timestamp on my upload was there, crystal clear. Executed, still valid, still binding. The clock was ticking now. People were whispering. The client had gone suspiciously quiet. And Chase. He was posting motivational quotes on Slack like he'd just read his first Gary V blog post. So I got to work. Final prep, no dramatics. I cleared my desk, not in a rage, but with the quiet efficiency of someone boxing up the last pieces of an era. A stress ball, a photo of my niece, my favorite mug that said Queen of Ops in chipped gold letters. I wiped down my keyboard, deleted my browser cache, and left the desk pristine. Let them wonder if I'd just stepped out for lunch. Then I opened Zoom, not for a call, for the settings. I uploaded a new virtual background, simple white text on a black field, nothing fancy. Effective 9:01 a.m. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to post an essay on LinkedIn. I just needed to show up. One last time. Let them see it with their own eyes. Let the lawyer lean forward. Let the founder's stomach drop. The fuse was lit, and I was already walking away from the building. The next all-hands was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. Could feel the digital tension humming through the meeting link before anyone even spoke. Cameras flickered on like stage lights, board members, department heads, a few brave souls from client success, pretending they hadn't heard the rumors swirling all week. I logged in at 8:59 and waited with my camera off, my microphone muted, and my resignation letter folded neatly beside me. At 9 a.m., Chase opened the show. Morning, team, he chirped, eyes too bright, suit too crisp. Excited to share some progress on our lean operations initiative. We're already seeing results from the new offshore strategy, lower overhead, tighter deliverables, and way more scalability. I watched his reflection in his own monitor, the way his eyes darted as he read from a script disguised as spontaneity. He was about to launch into a slide deck full of bullet points about synergy and velocity. That's when I turned my camera on. No greeting, no wave, no words, just me, staring straight into the lens like I was making eye contact with every person on that call because I was. In my right hand, my employee badge. The same one I'd swiped every day for 5 years, now dangling like a severed lifeline. In my left, a signed resignation letter held at shoulder height. Signature visible, timestamp clear, and behind me, black Zoom background with stark white letters, all caps, effective 9:01 a.m. I didn't blink. I didn't smirk. I didn't gloat. I just let the silence stretch. You could feel it hit the room like a low-pressure system. Someone coughed. Someone else dropped their mug. Chase faltered mid-sentence, eyes darting to the screen where I now took center stage. Susan, he said, his voice pinching upward. We can discuss this offline. I clicked mute. Not to stop him. To stop me. I wasn't giving him the satisfaction of turning this into a back and forth. He didn't deserve my words. The lawyer was 2 squares over in the gallery view, general counsel. Graying beard, always stoic, always detached, until now, his body shifted, leaned forward, squinted at the letter, paused, and then he looked toward the founder's square, which notably had no camera on. Just the initials MJ. I saw it all happen in less than 5 seconds. Chase kept talking, something about making space for new leadership structures, like I hadn't just detonated the room, but no one was listening. Slack was already lighting up in the corner of my screen. Private DMs, group chats, a message from one of my analysts. Did you just quit? I didn't reply. I just held the frame for 30 more seconds, let it burn in. Let them feel it. Then, with perfect timing, I clicked end meeting for me. I left them to it, floating in the awkward silence of their own arrogance, in a Zoom call where the most important voice had just signed off forever. 9:01 on the dot. The exact moment the clause activated. The moment I logged off, the company chat ignited like someone had tossed a Molotov into Slack. Threads exploded with a velocity I'd never seen. Did she really quit? Was that her actual badge? Is the clause real? Panic wrapped in professionalism, emojis desperately trying to soften the freefall. In one channel, someone dropped a screenshot of my Zoom background. In another, someone posted the link to the legal folder, where where the full client contract had been quietly sitting, time-stamped, untouched until now. The founder, Michael, had been watching the call from his office in Florida, camera off, probably still in golf attire. No one noticed he was on the call until Legal stood up pale and looked straight at his square. He didn't just do that, Michael said, almost to himself. The general counsel, Tom, adjusted his glasses, eyes still locked on where my square had gone dark. Tell me she didn't just quit. No one answered, because everyone knew she did. Tom didn't wait for permission. He left the room mid-sentence, phone already dialing. Legal protocol be damned, this wasn't a drill. By the time he reached Tanya, the client's head of risk management, the news had already traveled. I'm calling to clarify Susan Reynolds' employment status, Tom said, voice clipped, formal. Tanya didn't bother with pleasantries. So she's really gone? Tom hesitated. We're still assessing the situation. We're not, she said. We're reviewing our options. And without Susan, we have none. And there it was. Years of stability, trust, and escalation reliability boiled into one sentence. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She simply invoked the clause 6.4b, same one she'd insisted on during the pandemic. The same one we all dismissed as a comfort clause for a high-strung client. Turns out it wasn't comfort, it was leverage. Written, binding, and now activated by my silence. Inside the company, chaos bloomed. Chase had tried to keep talking after I logged off, but his confidence was rotting in real time. The board members on the Zoom stopped smiling. One of the investors killed their video abruptly. Another asked, who's taking over her responsibilities today? Chase blinked. We've got coverage in the offshore pipeline, no today. The investor repeated, who owns the relationship right now? No answer. He looked like a man watching the floor fall out from beneath him in slow motion. Meanwhile, I was already back in my apartment, barefoot, watching the rain hit the window. I made myself a sandwich, listened to a podcast, let the chaos unfold without me. Serene, unplugged, already out of reach. Because I knew what they didn't yet. You don't recover from nuking your named individual on live video. You don't silence the one person your contract requires to exist. And you sure as hell don't do it thinking there won't be a price. They'd spent so long pretending I didn't matter, until I stopped pretending I did. 21 hours and 13 minutes after I held up my resignation letter on Zoom, the client sent a formal termination notice. The subject line read, Activation of Clause 6.4b, immediate contract exit, that was it. No negotiation. No frantic calls begging for reconsideration. Just one clean email, cold and legal, confirming that the biggest account in the company, $14 million annually, was now gone. Investor confidence didn't wobble, it collapsed. By midday, 2 board members had canceled their upcoming meetings, citing urgent internal matters. One forwarded a message chain to legal demanding to know what idiot approved this transition without a succession plan. Chase's name was mentioned 5 times in the first paragraph alone. In Slack, the leadership channel went radio silent. No GIFs, no reaction emojis, just a slow, suffocating hush, the kind of silence you hear in a house after someone slammed the door for the last time. Chase, oh, he tried. By 2:00 p.m., he was already working damage control, pitching the loss to remaining clients and staff as a regrettable but ultimately manageable churn event. He even pushed out a company-wide email, poorly formatted, titled, Change Brings Opportunity. It ended with a quote from some tech blogger. In chaos, there is opportunity. Fortunately for him, chaos also leaves metadata, because legal wasn't playing along. Tom, the same general counsel who'd leaned forward during my resignation, was now openly contradicting Chase in investor calls. When asked if the contract was lost because of my resignation, he didn't hedge. Yes, he said flatly. Clause 6.4b was triggered. It was valid, binding, and ignored by leadership despite repeated warnings. He didn't mention names, didn't need to. It wasn't just about the money. It was the optics. The founder's prized account, built on 5 years of sweat, sleep deprivation, and a Rolodex of quiet miracles, had been vaporized by one ill-timed mute button and a son's inflated sense of invincibility. By sunset, industry Twitter had caught wind of the story. Someone leaked a vague thread. VP silences operations lead on live Zoom. 24 hours later, largest client gone. Wonder why? The post had 12K likes in 2 hours. I got a text from Clara, one of my old PMs who had left the company 6 months ago. You nuked them with one gesture. Legendary. Then another from Jake. They're walking around like it's a crime scene. And another from someone I didn't recognize. Clause 6.4b. Beautifully played. I didn't reply to any of them. I was busy putting together a new onboarding plan for a different client. New one that had called me earlier that morning to offer a short-term consulting gig. They'd seen the fallout. They knew the value. They wanted the person who understood the system, not the boy who broke it. I wasn't angry anymore. That had drained out days ago. Now, there was just that still, glassy sensation of vindication. Of knowing you were right the whole time and letting the world catch up on their own. They outsourced my project, but they forgot. It was the one thing they couldn't replace. The email leaked 3 days later. Nobody knew who sent it. Some say it was an intern in IT. Others swear it was someone from finance who finally had enough. Doesn't matter. The board email hit the wider company like a brick through a glass door. Subject line, you muted the named person. No greeting, no sign-off, just fury in prose. Michael, the founder, was done pretending. He'd stayed quiet through most of the fallout, hiding behind PR statements and back-channel spin. But now, with the M and a deal circling the drain and investors calling him at all hours, his gloves were off. The email wasn't addressed to Chase. It was about him. We entrusted him with continuity, and instead we got ego. You don't silence the clause holder mid-call and expect no consequences. You muted the named person. You signed the exit slip with a smirk. By the time the company scrambled to contain it, screenshots were already in group chats across the org. Someone made a meme. Chase's face photoshopped into the "This is fine" dog, surrounded by burning contract folders. By Friday, he was stripped of project oversight, quietly suspended pending internal review, though everyone knew what that meant. His Slack profile disappeared. His parking space was reassigned. The only trace he left was a meeting titled Strategic Synergies that nobody had the heart or energy. Delete. Meanwhile, legal did what legal does when they're tired of being ignored. They confirmed the clause's validity in writing and forwarded it to every active client on the books. For transparency, it was a calculated move, a signal flare to the market that, yes, the company had failed, but only because certain people forgot how contracts work. They couldn't spin it anymore. They had to own it. The M and a deal postponed indefinitely. The buyer wanted stability, got a viral Zoom resignation and a cratered retention forecast. The company's valuation dropped by double digits. Recruiting froze. A few key engineers jumped ship. But me, I was already 6 steps ahead. I'd accepted the consulting offer. New office, new badge, new start. Nothing flashy, just 4 walls, a decent chair, and a client who asked before making changes. That Tuesday morning, a bouquet arrived, deep crimson roses. Simple, elegant, no card, just a single folded note tucked under the ribbon. If you ever want to come back, we'll do it your way. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just placed the note in my drawer next to a copy of the clause they forgot. Funny, I never raised my voice. I just made sure they finally listened. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.